During the next episode in the online Exploitation topic series, a mental health practitioner provides insight about the adolescent brain and what makes them particularly vulnerable to exploitation. During the interview, Dr. Whitlow shares strategies that can help any adult who has a meaningful connection with adolescents and young adults. Thank you, Dr. Whitlow, for joining us to share your knowledge and expertise with our listening audience today. If you could get started by introducing yourself and share with us a little bit about the work you do with youth, please.
Yes. So first, I want to thank you for having me on. When I got the call that you all wanted to just talk about the combination of exploitation and mental health and prevention programs and what we can do to just better assist our children and our adolescents, I was so excited because the topic is so important. So thank you so much for having me on. So I am a licensed psychologist in the state of Ohio, and I have a private practice, Our Village. And at our village, we want to work with the village. So we want to target the family system. So we understand that there are unique needs that the adult male father in the family, the adult female mother, and the two children, the male child and the female child, are all dealing with their own unique issues. And so we try to target those issues so that the family unit is stronger. And so with children, I really try to keep myself abreast on specific issues, unique issues that today's child, the adolescent, is dealing with, and to be able to help them make sense of it, be able to give them the language to express what's going on with them, the skills and the tools to be able to manage some of the stressors and to keep their mental health strong, and then to help their parents to understand how to help and support them. So I've done work in the school system, school-based therapy, creating programs for children, teachers, and parents to be able to support mental health. And then, of course, in my private practice, having children in here just developing skills and increasing their knowledge of their mental health and what they can do to be healthy.
Thank you. That's great. And it's just so very important, as you said, the family unit, right? Nothing happens in isolation or in a vacuum. So great work happening there.
Thank you.
So I guess in the, so you kind of mentioned how, today's youth, they're dealing with a very unique set of challenges. So kind of in the work that you're doing with young people, what have you observed related to why it is that young folks don't feel safe going to a trusted adult when they are being exploited?
Yes. So I think that there are several kind of just basic old school reasons that aren't even unique to today. And one of those that I'll offer to you is that it is just a conflict with their developmental stage. Right? Adolescents are in the phase of identity development, which means that they are striving for independence. They want to be able to make sense of things on their own. They want to be able to make good decisions and show and demonstrate to the world that they are capable beings. They know what they're doing, and to need to reach out to an adult to say there's something that's going on that I don't know how to handle, I don't understand what's going on, or I think I've made a mess of things. It really causes a great deal of internal conflict. And I think that that's one main reason that stands the test of time that makes it hard for our youth to come to trusted adults.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's just such a great point, right? We promote the independence, right? And we promote students or young adults making those decisions and being independent and taking responsibility. So it is a little counterintuitive, honestly.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And I think connected with that, they're also in the process of developing the skills to be able to assess the consequences of their actions. Their frontal lobe is now developing. And so they are enhancing their ability to reason and to problem solve and to foresee into the future and predict things and all that stuff. So they are honing their skills around assessing the risks, the benefits, and the overall outcomes of their behaviors. And as they are trying to assess and figure out, okay, if I behave in this way, what's going to happen short term? What's going to happen long term? Will people be pleased with me or not? Will I be accepted or will I be rejected? All of those things, I think it frightens them so much to think about the possible punishment that may come, particularly if they go to a trusted adult and say, hey, I put myself in a position where I'm being exploited, or hey, someone took advantage of me and now I'm in a position where I'm being exploited, I'm being sexploited. And so due to fear of punishment, due to fear of how they'll be judged, due to fear of letting the adults down in their life and feeling as if they're their rights or the freedoms that they have been given may be taken from them because they'll be deemed to be unworthy, unfit, unsafe. I think all of those things are very key for our adolescents. And so they kind of just muddle through a dangerous field, right? Because exploitation and sexploitation is a dangerous place to be. And so they muddle through it, hoping that things will magically get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, that the time, so that the word muddling through, right? Like to be able to have time to make the mistake and fix it. But unfortunately, you know, a good example, unfortunately, is with the Do It for James Foundation, right? It all happened in roughly 19 hours, I believe.
Yes.
So even be able to, in any of our minds, right, whether we're 50 or 15, to be able to make decisions about what's the best thing to do next is really difficult in that short amount of time.
Yes. And then the adolescent, you add their developmental thought processing, which is the invincibility complex, right? They do not believe that the typical harms can actually impact them. They do not believe that they're vulnerable to certain dangers. And so because of that, they may be a little more wanton with how they act and behave. They may not recognize that they are in territory that can lead to, and in the Woods family's case, you know, death. Not recognizing how severe and how dire it all can be. And then today's factors, the fact that our youth are overexposed to knowledge. They have so much knowledge, which tricks them into believing that they have wisdom. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I talk to my families and I talk to my youth about this all the time. To know a fact is one thing. To know how to apply it, how to use it, to know how it will manifest itself and the consequences that it can lead to, that's a whole different ball game. And that really does come with lived experience. It really does come with trial and error. It really does come with the cognitive ability to reason a situation and a phenomenon out at a level of maturity that adolescents just don't have. And so I think that even when you think about a child that's faced with harm and danger, they believe that they know more than they do because they know a term, because they know a context. They understand, I know what exploitation is, and no one's going to do that to me. I won't be in a vulnerable position. They can say these words and say these concepts, but they don't understand that. And as you're saying that, you're also simultaneously walking yourself into danger.
Yeah, another great point. I love that that knowledge tricks them into thinking that they're wise. Great point. So all really great observations. So as you think through those, and again with your work with families and students, our listeners are parents, school personnel, students who are interested in helping to advance school safety. and the safety of any individual. What are 2 or 3 strategies or actions that they can take to make it safe for people to come forward and ask for help?
2 or 3, is that my limit? No.
You can take some liberty if you'd like, Dr. Whitwell.
And I say that because I think being attentive to our mental health needs, being more attentive to the human experience and taking it more seriously. This is my line of work. This is what I do. So I could just go on and on about what it is that we need to do, especially in the school systems where our youth are spending the great majority of their day. The first suggestion, though, that I'll offer is just how important podcasts like this are. Creating platforms and spaces to talk about this so that we can normalize the phenomenon. No one wants to be the anomaly, coming out and sharing about an experience that is foreign to others, that will leave them open to being judged. Because if we're not talking about exploitation, if we're not talking about sexploitation, if we are not talking about there being predators who are preying on you online and they have very cunning tactics and ways of getting to you and then putting you over a barrel, it makes it very hard to feel a sense of comfort coming out and saying this is happening to me. So normalizing this, I think that in schools, creating programming, creating workshops intentionally, not just being responsive to crises. I can't emphasize that enough, because there is a stigma that comes along to programming or conversations that come at the tail end of some kind of crisis, right? So there was someone in our school who was trafficked and they're now gone, or they turned up dead, and now we want to have a conversation. Now we want to have a forum. Well, there's a stigma related to that makes children say, well, I don't want to be connected to that. That makes children say, well, no, that's not me. But if we are just having and creating safe spaces to normalize the topic and have the conversation, that's one key way to protect our children. Another thing is we need to, as the adults and as even the peer supporters, the students that want to be in support of this, we have to mirror the communication and the language for people who could potentially be victims to be able to share what's going on with them. It is hard to state that you are a victim. And I do workshops where I talk to people about this concept of victim versus survivor and the negative connotation related to victim. And I share with people that being a victim there's no negative connotation to that. It simply means that you are the person who was targeted for someone to harm. That's what a victim is. It does not mean that you are weak. It does not mean you are vulnerable. It does not mean that you were stupid. All it means is that you were the target of someone's attempts to harm you. And helping people to understand that language and how to use it and how to be empowered with that language is so important. Now, this other one that I have for you is, I think we need to monitor, we need to monitor the ways in which we talk about issues of exploitation, sexploitation, mental health, and other issues that are typically correlated to stigma and shame and fear. Because while I'm on this podcast and there's this platform to talk about it, I am speaking about it as if it's something that's deplorable and we need to act behind it. We need to put action behind it. We need to be an advocate in our communities fighting against it. But then behind closed doors, if I go home and I judge the potential victim, well, she's being fast. She's out there on the internet, half clothed. What does she expect is going to happen? Well, you better not run to me and think that I'm going to save you if somebody hurts you or harms you, right? This is the ways that we are talking behind closed doors. And that potential victim knows and hears that they don't want to come to you. You aren't safe because you say you can trust me and that you're safe. They are observing and watching you all the time. And so we have to monitor our language. And then that means we got to check ourselves. What are our foundational ideals around this? Do you really believe that is bad, or do you blame the victim? Do you have some of your own traumas that you need to get past in order to be in a healthier space around it? I'm sorry, I could go on and on, so I'll stop there.
No, those are right, and I want to follow up on a couple of them. All really great points. I want to circle back to the mirroring communication. So early on, you said something about like the helping families have the language to express what's happening to them, or students or individuals, right? To help them find the right words to say this is what's happening. And to get people to listen, right? To actually stop what they're doing to listen to that child for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes or longer. What would mirror the communication look like? Could you give us an example of that?
Yes. And so as myself, as the professional that's in the room, when I am talking to families about some of the dangers or some of my concerns, I am owning my perspective and how I feel about a certain concept. And so that's one thing, as I'm speaking to them, if there is something that I'm concerned about, if there is something that displeases me about the course of our treatment, let's say, I am owning that these are my feelings, and the way that I'm expressing it, I am sharing, this is how I feel, these are my concerns. And that's so important because in our society, feelings are diminished and belittled. People rarely speak from a space of owning their thoughts and feelings. People usually speak from a finger pointing perspective, assuming how you must feel. They speak from a perspective of defensiveness, what I will do if this is your intention toward me, right? Because really, what I'm really trying to communicate is that I'm afraid and I don't want to be hurt. So can we come to a resolution? But the way that I communicate that to you is, and if you do this to me, you better watch out because I'm not going to have that. That's not really what you want to communicate. And so as the professional one, being able to own my feelings, my thoughts, my perspectives, to mirror to them that you should, when you communicate, own how it is that you feel and say what it is that you are feeling, what it is that you are thinking. Another way of, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, I was gonna say that's good. And I'm thinking of like, so very applicable to obviously a parent, but also a school counselor or a teacher, right? Who is having this conversation with a student that they're concerned about, to be able to do it from their perspective, right? I feel this way, or I am concerned, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And what that does too, and this is unrelated to the mirroring, but what it does is it creates a safe, it creates a space that welcomes the conversation. Because now, as the adult, as the authority, you are the one that is creating the environment and you're leading the way. And so now you've introduced this topic. You've introduced that this is okay. We can talk about this, which ushers that child, it ushers the child in for them to say, well, since you brought it up, I'd like to share this, versus leaving it to them to find the courage, find the language, fight past the fears and the concerns that they are going to be judged by you. You put all that on them and say, you put it on the table. No, we as the authority figure in whatever role we're in should be the ones that are leading the way in that way.
So the normalizing concept, so your sort of first strategy tip, the normalizing within a school community, within a family, talking about it. I find that interesting in that I think some of the barrier to folks normalizing it is that people don't realize, so people meaning older adults, don't realize how normal or how I think the prevalence of exploitation, sexploitation are. Like the likelihood that every young adult is going to bump up against this in their lifetime is probably pretty substantial. Am I correct in that? It is sort of normal in today's society.
It is prevalent. You are certainly correct with that. It is prevalent for sure. Even the normalizing the conversation. I love where you went about the older adults who did not grow up with the internet being just central to their life, whose identity was not being developed around internet relationships and connections, how they can be disconnected from this. Needing to find space where these conversations can be brought to them, because there are real life lived examples of how this kinds of exploitation happened to those adults, but just in real life, in real time, right? And we need to start helping them make correlations. In the 80s, the big push in workplaces around harassment, sex-based harassment. That's where that came from, is these attempts at exploitation, these attempts at trying to make you feel uncomfortable, get you in a compromising position that I can then continually take advantage of. If you look at the history of sexual harassment in the workplace, that's where it all came from. And so if we can do things to help adults to apply, okay, these same kinds of dynamics that we had to be aware of are now just happening on the internet. And on the internet, people just have just more access, 24-hour access and all kinds of ways to get to them. I think that it will help the adults to understand, oh, these are the things that we need to be looking out for, and that it's nothing that the child who is the potential victim is particularly doing. So yes, there are things that they can do to guard and protect themselves, but there's nothing that they're doing, so they shouldn't be blamed. And I think that that's the typical approach, is you must be doing something to be calling this kind of attention to you, to have people approaching you in these ways. No. Just like in face-to-face interactions, when someone decides that they want to take advantage of you, harm you, harass you, cross your boundaries, rape you, all of those things, there's nothing that you are doing. It is all the perpetrator. It is all them. And that's where our focus needs to shift to. What is wrong with them? Not what did you do to make this happen?
That's great. I again love that point as well, for how, as an older generation, we can kind of create that frame to have a better understanding. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing all of this. This was really great info. I am positive that it will help any of our listening audience, but particularly our students, parents, staff in Maryland. So even though Ohio isn't that far away, we appreciate you bringing your wisdom from Ohio to Maryland to join us.
Thank you so much. And if I just may put one last plug in.
Yes. Yes.
We are in 2025. So the perspective that mental health treatment is something that we utilize in response to some kind of crisis is now an antiquated thought. We need to ensure also that our youth are engaging in mental health care on a regular basis, simply as a form of good health practice. You would not dare not send your child for their well child checkup, have them have a pediatrician look at them. And I have 2 children, and the pediatrician will often say, well, do you have any concerns? No, we're just here to do the regular thing. That's the kind of thought processing and the way that our perspective needs to continue to shift as we think about mental health, because in those mental health spaces, it is just primed also for these kinds of conversations, to be able to talk about things that otherwise may feel uncomfortable. So that's the last thing that I want to just impress upon the listeners, is make mental health treatment a regular part of your child's journey.
Yep. Yep. Normalize those conversations, mirror those conversations as well. Thank you. Great point. Well, we appreciate you very much and wish you a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Prepare. We hope the information provided was helpful in supporting Maryland efforts to keep our children safe. Stay tuned for the next episode in this topic series, expanding awareness about the intersection of online exploitation and human trafficking.
If you or someone you love is facing a mental health crisis, support is always available 24/7 and just 3 numbers away. Dial 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You are not alone. Talk with someone today.